Hello world, welcome to the 253rd Climate Change Emergency Protest here in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. This is my third attempt. The first two, the microphone wasn't working right, so I'll try to stay out of the wind if I can. I might move out of the picture frame. I'm going to leave the tree as a block. Number 253, this is September 28th, 2023. Next week will be number 254. That'll be on October 6th, 2023. Right now there's a super El Nino starting up. Predictions are of a 2.7 degrees Celsius increase in temperature in the oceans out in block number 3.4, which goes from South America out into the Pacific going west. The El Nino, to determine whether an El Nino is an El Nino, there needs to be a 0.5 degree departure from average, and they're saying this year will be a 2.7 degree departure from average. A super El Nino is usually a 2.5, so this is going to be well above in the super El Nino range. Probably the biggest El Nino ever we had, super El Nino, and so the block that's heating up is just going gangbusters, and it's unbelievable. So what will happen with this super El Nino? Well, the worldwide effects, maybe not in your region, maybe not here, maybe it'll happen all at once here. The effects will be it'll be deviations from what's normal. So it could be temperature increases, fire, drought, floods, you name it. This year, the sea surface temperatures are extremely warm. The Atlantic, the Gulf, the Pacific, the Indian Ocean, the Mediterranean, you name it, they're all extremely warm at this point. And that is not a good thing because Super El Nino will exacerbate that temperature increase we've already had and make it much, much worse. Will this put us into a higher plateau? My thinking is yes. What happens is that the super El Ninos occur, and once they're done, it goes down a little bit, but never goes back down to the average it was beforehand. So super El Nino, we go up to a new area that we've never been before, and what we're doing basically is really putting ourselves into a situation that is untenable. You can't keep going on this path with these leaders and policies and things, and not pay a super El Nino price for our indiscretion and our not caring about the environment and nature and how Mother Earth will come back to get us in the end. This system is extremely large, and we're very small critters on it. And we've done such damage to the atmosphere and everything that we're going to be shrugged off like a flea off of a dog if we keep on this path. So the floor is coming up. This decade will be the hottest for humans ever. What's coming up. This decade will also be the coolest decade ever for those who are young and grow old. So this has been the hottest for me in my lifetime, what's coming up in these years. But it's going to be the coolest for youngsters that are coming up, and they'll look back at this year and this decade and go, huh, it was really cool back then compared to now. So I have several theories. I talked about it 20 minutes ago. I'll try to reiterate what I said. Doubtful whether I can do the same thing. Right now you have a massive ice and glacier melt around the world, especially in Antarctica and Greenland and the Alps and the Himalayas. And what's happening is that water weight will be transferred into the oceans, and it is transferring into the oceans. And the result of that is that you have loss of albedo, reflectivity of the sun. You have darker land being exposed, and the heat from that beats on the earth rather than being reflected into the atmosphere. You also have extreme heat. So also you have the AMOC potential shutdown due to the fresh water going into the oceans and slowing down the currents as far as that goes, the Atlantic Medio-Diurnal overturning circulation. With this weight, you have volcanoes that could erupt as a result of that, massive amount of earthquakes. You're going to start seeing earthquakes, I believe. And then you're going to have plate tectonic shifts after that. There are 20 plate tectonics, 20 plates around the whole world right now. So all this weight transfers, and something has to happen as a result of that. You can't just unweight billions and trillions and quadrillion amount of tons of weight and not have an effect. So it's going from the glaciers into the oceans and then be transferred out from there. Temperatures. Okay, so this is a really controversial thing. People I respect beyond belief, everyone that I've seen, talked to, heard about, whatever, has always said that temperature is always catching up to carbon dioxide. That's how it's always been. That's how it always was. I looked at the charts over the last 800,000 years. It appears that temperatures briefly go ahead of the carbon dioxide, and then the carbon dioxide catches up to the temperatures and then accelerates. And the reason behind this, and this is the theory of mine, is that the reason why this happens is because the temperatures go up in the past, and then that heats up the oceans. The oceans then can no longer hold the carbon dioxide and the oxygen and various gases and vents them into the atmosphere. Then you have temperature, carbon dioxide going gangbusters, and then they sync up sort of, and they go in sync as far as increases. So, so what happens is that the oceans vent off the carbon dioxide, then permafrost and methane also melt and thaw. That has massive amounts of methane in it, CH4, nitrous oxide, things like that. And then what happens with that is that when the oceans heat up, the AMOC and other currents shut down. Okay, so you no longer have the conveyor of the super cold water diving deep into the ocean and driving the conveyor of currents. You have a surface layer of fresh water, and then the currents slow down and eventually stop. And they think that's what's happening with the AMOC right now. And what happens when the oceans slow down is that you get hypoxia, and that the oceans no longer have the oxygen. They heat up severely, stratification, things like that. And then you have hydrogen sulfide as a result of that. You have dead oceans, and that outgasses hydrogen sulfide, which is lethal to mammals and is semi-lethal to reptilians. So it's stagnant oceans is what occurs. And that's where we're headed. We're heading towards stagnant oceans. That is theory number 2. Theory number 3. Temperature imbalance. Right now, we have the largest temperature imbalance in the history of humans, 150,000 years. If you look at the charts, the most it's ever gone up or down is since humans have been on the planet, minus 0.2 degree watts per meter squared on average, or as high as plus 0.3 degrees watts per meter squared. So minus 2.0, or I'm sorry, minus 0.2 watts per meter squared, or plus 0.3 watts per meter squared. Well, keep in mind the 0.3. Right now we're at 1.4 watts per meter squared. So it's a crazy amount of temperature imbalance going on. It's not even close. There's never ever been anything like this in the history of humans. So you have basically a flat line that keeps undulating back and forth between the 0.3 and minus 0.2. And then all of a sudden, where we are now in the last few years, it's gone up to 1.4 degrees, or 1.4 watts per meter squared in the oceans and around the world as far as temperature imbalance. So it's nuts, and the effects will be permanent and get worse and worse. That temperature imbalance will not go away. And the reason behind that is we're doing nothing to control carbon dioxide, and things are spinning out of control with methane, nitrous oxide, and things like that. And then eventually hydrogen sulfide and stuff. But as far as greenhouse gases, they're not going away. So we're going to end up with this imbalance, and that doesn't go away. That leads to other feedback loops that I've talked about previously of things being affected. So right now, Antarctica, this is number 4. Antarctica is a series of islands. It's not one giant glacier as people think. It's not a continent, basically, as you would think a continent. Most of Antarctica is ice. It's a series of islands. It's ice. Most of Antarctica is below sea level, either because that's how it is, or the ice is so heavy it's pushed down on the land, and it's pushed down as much as 1,500 feet to 3,000 feet to 5,000 feet below sea level. And the ice is grounded in the bottom of the ocean there. Well, what's going to happen eventually is, and is happening now probably, is that the ocean's digging away at that ice that's underwater, because the ocean water is much warmer than what the ice is at 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Celsius. So the sea level, this oceans are digging away at this ice, and you're going to have more and more catastrophic failure of this ice. And if the seawater gets into Antarctica, then we have a world of problems. And I surmise in the past that's what's happened. Of course, there's Pangea at one time, so that doesn't even affect. But what's going to happen is you end up with 200 feet of sea level rise. Whether it happens over the next decade, 1,000 years, million years, I don't know. I'm not in charge of that. But right now, the path we're on is not a good path. This is number 5. Much of central Greenland is an ice sheet, and it's well below. It's a giant glacier there. It's well below sea level, and also with the albedo loss and the sea level rise, you end up with an AMOC shutdown due to fresh water going into the oceans. So again, if the ocean gets into central Greenland, it'll start digging away at the ice, and Greenland represents, I think, 70 feet of sea level rise. What's happening now also is that if the temperatures rise close to 1.5 degrees Celsius above previous 1880 levels, and right now they're saying that it's all these things are happening at 1.16 degrees above average since 1880. What's going to happen is that as we get closer and closer to 1.5 degrees Celsius, and people think, oh, we got to 1.5. No, things get worse and worse and worse as you approach this. At 1.5 degrees, lanternfly. As you approach 1.5 degrees Celsius, you're going to have the tropics with 2.5 billion people being uninhabitable. The tropic, you're going to have massive migrations or death. And 2.5 billion people is a lot of people. Not a million. 2.5 billion people in the tropics will not be able to live there as we approach 1.5 degrees Celsius. And with the Super El Nino, we're going to be over that for whether it's briefly or for a long time. The Super El Nino is going to push us to that. And then the feedback loop's kicking even harder, which keeps the temperatures up. So the world's going to change, and the United States at the border has a horrible migration policy. We think we can't take any more people in. They're taking our jobs. This is all propaganda on both sides doing things. It's astounding how unchristian our country has become, and other countries as well. They think they can't handle it anymore. But the fact is that we need, for example, this battlefield, this empty land. You could put people in here if you had to. People need a place to live. Maybe have a population restriction as far as how many kids the population can have and things like that. But there is more than enough land here in the United States. India, for example, is 1/3 the United States, but 3 times the population. So we have more than enough land here. Whether we have enough resources, I don't know. But if you're a true Christian, you believe in helping others, then we're in a situation that is unchristian-like. We've become extremely hardcore and mean towards other people. So 2024 will most likely be the hottest year ever, this year coming up. The Super El Nino kicked in, the feedbacks are kicking in, and the temperature imbalance and everything else. And this El Nino is going to spin off in directions that we have no idea. This has never happened before. This is unprecedented. If you look off the coast of Japan going east, the water temperatures there are extremely hot, which is not normal. It's almost like a La Nina behavior. But these ocean temperatures are out of line, and there's no baseline that we can say, hey, this is going to happen or that's going to happen. Anyone that says that really doesn't know what's happened, doesn't know what's involved here. You can't just draw a line and say you're going to get more floods and more of this and more of that. Things are spinning out of control, and we got leaders in charge right now who are doing things that are policies that are absolute murder. That's what it comes down to. When you have drilling being allowed and authorized by the Biden administration in the North Slope of Alaska, where you have the United Kingdom right now authorizing massive drilling in the North Sea. They're going to drill the crap out of that. You have Canada drilling in the Alberta tar sands. You have Russia doing their drilling and mining. You have China doing coal mines. You have India burning coal like there's no tomorrow. You have Australia exporting coal. Everyone's responsible for what's going on. Nuclear is not the answer, because that stuff I gave a talk on that, how long it stays around, the half-life of uranium and everything. People to think that you could use nuclear and leave instructions what to do about it would be like us trying to get instructions in cuneiform from the Babylonians or whoever. Stuff stays around for hundreds of thousands of years as radiation. And if you don't control the 250 reactors or whatever we have around the world, we're going to have a massive problem. You got to get rid of that stuff before all hell breaks loose. And we're going to have to go back to whatever, but you can't go nuclear. You can't go fossil fuels. We need some alternative methods. The Earth has extreme amounts of electricity within it, and Tesla was onto that as far as how to use the Earth as far as that goes. And we're choosing not to do it. We're spending hundreds of billions of dollars on murder and war and things like that, but we're not spending any money basically on research and development of what to do about renewables and things like that. We're giving $7 trillion a year towards the fossil fuel industry for subsidies, which is $19 billion a day worldwide. we could use all that money for research and development, develop mass transit and things like that. We all don't need our individual cars in parking lots or in our garages and things like that. So leaders in charge they don't have your best interests. You don't have your best interests if you're voting for any of these parties involved. If your party's in charge right now around the world, there's not anyone that's doing anything by and large that's going to save us. They're engaged in policies that will actually murder us and murder your kids and murder all life on Earth. So if we keep on this path and we keep voting for those people, and you're thinking the people that got you into this problem, the parties that got you into this problem over the last 60 years are going to be the ones to get you out of it, you're sorely mistaken. We need a whole revolution in thought process and things like that. So right now we're being invaded by lanternflies. This tree must be attacking it, the poor thing. It's probably getting eaten. So I'll catch you next week. That'll be number 254. That'll be on October 6th. Catch you then.